Welcome to my office. This is the first in a new series which I am calling Goodreads Gets Good Read. Yeah, we'll workshop that title, that's not ideal. So, everywhere I go, I get asked questions about books and writing and all sorts of things. And I just figured I'd answer a few of them, seeing as I've got this platform, seeing as I can chat to you like this. So that's what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to start by going to Goodreads because there's a big list of questions on there, and I'll just pull out two or three each time and answer them, and I'll get into as much depth as I can without boring anybody. And then if you guys have got questions, feel free to put them in the comments and I'll get to them in a separate video. Okay? So I've got Goodreads here on my computer, which you can't see. And the first question is the big question which I get asked everywhere. What is the difference between the 7 deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle and the 7.5 deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle? And the difference is the UK and the US. So the 7 deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle is what it's called in the UK, and the 7.5 deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle is what it's called in the US. The reason the title was changed is because of the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is an astonishing book and just a wonderful, beautiful, fantastic piece of prose and imagination. That book came out between the UK and the US release dates. My publisher got a little bit nervous that the two things would get conflated. So we spent about 2 or 3 months just going back and forward, trying to change the title of the 7 deaths. But the 7 deaths is the best, most perfect title for this book. I don't think it could ever be called anything else. So we never got anywhere. And we were trying all sorts of things. We had things like The Everlasting Life of Evelyn Hardcastle at one point. I can't remember some of the others, but as you can imagine, they were like a bit ridiculous and we were trying too hard. And we weren't getting anywhere. And after a few months, the CEO of Source Books, which is my US publisher, she stepped in and just said, we're calling this thing the 7.5 deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. That's what we're doing conversation over. And that's why it became the 7.5 deaths. Now, I should say, I love the 7.5 deaths as the title. I think it's wonderful. It has not avoided any confusion whatsoever. I famously, this is a story I've told a lot of places, I was at a convention once and an elderly man came up to me and he'd brought the 7 deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, the 7.5 deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and the 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And he brought them thinking they were a trilogy, and he asked me to sign them all, and he was going to give them to his daughter, which is why there's currently a copy of the 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo floating around with Stu Turton's signature inside of it, because I couldn't bear to disappoint him. So if you've got that one, I'm sorry, that's completely worthless, because that's not Taylor Jenkins Reid's signature in it. Yeah, should we go on to our next question? So, will there be a sequel to any of your books, or are they all standalone? They're always going to be standalones. I love standalones. I find it really hard, really hard to sit at a computer. I find it really hard to sit at a computer for 8 hours and just type non-stop and just try and dredge this story in my head and just put it onto a screen. I find it quite tedious. So for me to do that, for me to get to this computer every day, I've got to be writing something that's challenging to me, that's surprising to me, something that I don't already know the ins and outs, something that can sort of confound me and I have to be thinking about. Standalones allow that to happen. Standalones allow me to discover things in the writing. If I create a series, I've already established the world, I'll have established the characters, and a lot of that discovery would go out of the process for me. I am astounded by authors who can write a series because they can continually find depths in characters, they can continually evolve the relationships, and I love that idea, but that's not something I'm very good at doing. I need to create from whole cloth every single time. So I think it would always be standalones for me. And the final question we'll have, do you desire to see your books done on screen, movie or TV series, or do you feel that you'd prefer to remain in book form only? What do you feel the pros and cons of books becoming movies? Interesting question this. I don't know if you guys know, but basically when you put a book out into the world, it gets optioned. And by optioned it means that TV and production companies and movie people come sniffing around and they buy the rights to turn it into something else, whether that's a TV series or a movie or anything else. They buy the option to it, and the option lasts for about 18 months and then they've got to buy the option again. It's really standard that you put a book out and then someone comes and buys the option and then nothing happens. They just want the option. They want the choice to make it if that becomes a thing in TV. So if you become part of the trend, so say suddenly everyone's making time travel stories, suddenly they're going to want the Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle because that's a time travel story, right? And they've got it in their locker to use. So that's the way it works. Some authors really hate it because this thing that they've worked on for ages, this beautiful, wonderful creation, this perfect piece of imagination that they work so hard to put onto the page, somebody else gets hold of it, a director gets hold of it, another writer gets hold of it, and they have a different idea of what it can be, and they change it and they amend it and all sorts of other things, and they really hate that process. I don't mind it. I think that the original thing exists. I think the novel continues to be in the world. It doesn't get destroyed because of the adaptation. It doesn't get changed. It's still there. People can still go and read it. I would really like any adaptation of my novels to take really big creative swings, because that's what I wanted to do with the book in the first place. I would really, really like them to be radically different to what I have written, so that there's almost like two versions of the same story being told, and you can really see the director and the alternative writer's version of my ideas. I think that would be marvellous, but it's just so hard to do. It's so hard to adapt something. So I like them. My bank manager likes them. My accountant likes them because they pay you quite good money to adapt them. I have no problem with them existing. It's just really, really hard to do. And we're currently adapting Seven Deaths for the screen, and it's just such an interesting process, and it requires so much work. So that's where we're at. That's how I feel about it. And this has been the first edition of Goodreads Get Good Read. That is still a terrible title, but it's what we'll go with for the moment. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll drop another one next week. Alright, bye!